Welcome to Modern Financial Wellness, the podcast dedicated to helping you feel better about your finances. I'm your host, Jim Grace, and I'll be your guide as we discuss the psychology of money and explore the emotional aspects that shape our financial decisions and how we feel about them. A quick note before we start, although I do hope that you find the information on this show to be helpful, in no way are any of these discussions to be taken as specific financial advice. Please do your own research and talk to your own advisors, especially when making important financial decisions. All right, everybody, Dave Giesleman is here. Dave, thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate being here.
Founder, owner of Become Limitless Flow State Mindset Coaching and Limitless Flow Breathwork. All those topics in your businesses and your work, I'm really excited to talk to you about today. To kick us off, will you give us a little bit about your background? Because you weren't always a flow state mindset coach. You had another professional life unrelated. So would you kind of walk us through your background a little bit?
Sure. So I'm a retired chef. I cooked professionally for 30 years here in Los Angeles, 20 of them in super high performing environments. I was at Spago, I was at the Peninsula Hotel, and have worked most of my professional life in super high performance environments, high performing kitchens. And just to give you the quick nickel tour, I started cooking professionally very, very young. It was a stressful environment. It was a high chaos, a high pressure environment. I, like many young cooks, attempted to regulate my nervous system chemically, and that turned out not to be a long-term sustainable solution for me. In my early 20s, I got sober. So my environment didn't change, but my coping mechanism had to. I've been on a 25-year lay study of breathwork, mindfulness, meditation, peak performance, flow state, anything I could do to sort of regulate my nervous system in high pressure environments.
Got it. And I was thinking while you were talking about high performance, if that often equates to high stress, right? So a lot of times it seems like those come hand in hand, right? High performers, high stress, a lot going on. And we're all looking for ways to kind of deal with those things as we experience them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, how do you break a quarterback or how do you break a power center, in basketball is you just put too much pressure on them and they break, right? And that's human beings break under pressure. And so the better pressure management skills that they as a player or they as a team have, the better they operate in the long term and achieve goals.
Yeah. And I feel this myself. I'm not in a high stress, high performance environment necessarily, but I'm running a business. I have 2 little kids. I've got a lot going on. So there's just a lot of opportunity for stress, overwhelm. You don't have to be a professional chef in a high-end kitchen to kind of experience physically and mentally and emotionally, a lot of what you were probably feeling as a chef. I think a lot of people are kind of going through their day-to-day feeling similar things. Do you see that as well?
Absolutely. And we don't need to compare stress in order for me to recognize that you have it. Your stress level is the highest you've ever experienced. My stress level, the highest I've ever experienced, felt the same for both of us. It felt overwhelming. It felt crushing. It felt like I didn't know what to do. And there's no point in comparing stress or pressure and you're not feeling as much as I am. No, you're feeling, as much as you
right.
are, and not getting into the comparison game there, I think is really important. Well, I shouldn't be under this much pressure. My life isn't as busy as that. No, you're a dad, you're a business owner, you're a husband, you're a human in the world.
It's a great point. I think a lot of people, things are pretty good, right? I shouldn't feel this stressed. I've got, a house and a business and income and everything's pretty good. Why do I still feel this way? I'm hearing you say it's because we're all human beings, right? We're experiencing the world similarly, regardless of our circumstances, which is
all of those things are stress causers.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the science of what's going on in our bodies in these high stress moments, regardless of circumstances when we start to feel these things? What's happening?
When we go into our stress response, and I'm gonna take 2 seconds. I'm gonna take you back 50,000 years. You and your partner have had an amazing Paleolithic day, and you've gone about your Paleolithic lives, and you've eaten Paleolithic newts and fruits and nuts and berries, and you're heading down to the Paleolithic stream to get some Paleolithic water, and a wolf pops up, right? And you snap into fight or flight, right? And when your nervous system does that, as it should in the presence of a wolf, you snap into fight or flight, and a few things happen physiologically. A few things happen in your body. Your heart rate increases, your airways dilate, your pupils dilate, take in more information. Your adrenal gland squirts a big squirt of, epinephrine and norepinephrine and cortisol into your system, all the stress hormones, to put energy and blood and glucose into your muscles and get you ready to fight or flee. And since you're not going to take on a wolf, you bail out of there. Now, at the same time, a couple other things happen. Your digestive system slows, your elimination system slows, your reproductive system slows, a whole bunch of systems slow in your body, because when your only job is to escape the wolf, those things don't serve you. Having to poop real bad, being super horny when your only job is to escape the wolf doesn't help you. Right?
Get your priorities right in that moment. Yeah.
Right. And so your body shuts those things down. Now, to the same degree, deep, complex, long-range abstract thinking also doesn't serve you when your only job is to escape the wolf. And so one of the things that gets shut down is your neocortex and your frontal lobe, which is responsible for all of the executive functioning, decision-making, problem-solving, socially appropriate behavior, all of those things. So when most of us are under stress, the common sort of answer that we have for ourselves is, if I can solve the problem, the stress level will decrease. And for a really great, really good evolutionary reason, the exact opposite is true. Until you lower the stress level, you will not have access to the part of your brain that's going to solve your problem. Yeah. Which is why English flees, and we feel like we're turning in circles with one toenail to the ground, trying to figure out what to do next.
Yeah, there's a lot there, and I appreciate the history lesson. So our bodies have evolved to help us, right? To survive, find food, don't get killed. All those responses are very necessary for us as human beings. But 100%. We can find ourselves in those states operating in our normal day-to-day lives, whether you're in a kitchen or a financial planner or working in a professional setting, right? Our body starts to respond similarly as to where, if I'm hearing you correctly, like a wolf popped out by the stream when we're reading emails or we're trying to get the filet at the perfect temperature. Is that right?
Is exactly right. And so, like, storytelling, meaning making, future projecting, ruminating, overthinking, all of these things show up in our bodies as a wolf, right? So very few of us are experiencing actual close contact with a wolf as often as our nervous systems would indicate, right? But we go into these thought processes, and that email shows up, or you got to make that call, or you got to do that thing, or a challenge shows up, and it actually shows up in your body like a wolf. And it actually shows up in your body as an existential threat. And so you must calm the body first, because when your body believes that it is experiencing an existential threat, the part of your brain that's going to solve the problem is offline. You don't have access to it.
And I'd imagine that when your body is in that state for extended periods of time, that leads to all kinds of problem, chronic illness, disease, you name it. I'm sure there's a long list. We couldn't even cover all the problems that arise when your body stays in that state for an extended period of time?
Right. Let's cover the basics, just the ones we talked about. So when you snap into fight or flight, digestion slows, elimination slows, libido slows, reproductive system slows, which is why people who spend a lot of time in their stress response develop tummy problems, bathroom problems, bedroom problems. And if you spend a lot of time in stress, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
In addition to, you talked about the impact on your mind and executive functioning and decision making. One of the things I know as a financial planner, when I read research or look into these things, when we're stressed, it's not a good time to make a financial decision, right? Because you're just not capable. So there's the impact our body is having in this response on our ability to think clearly and make good decisions, right? When we're in that state. So I wanted to just throw that out there because this is a show about financial well-being. And some people might think, what are we talking about? Flow and breath work here today. But there's absolutely an impact in number one, money is stressful and overwhelming to a lot of people in and of itself, right? Money and the subject, I see in my practice or even personally that the thought of it and doing some planning and looking at money can make people stressed out, right? And elicit these responses that we're talking about. And then the impact on our brain doesn't allow us the opportunity to really make clear financial decisions that are best for us. So we just want to kind of throw out that connection. So where do you want to take this? Should we talk about flow state or the breath work? Maybe talk about, flow state a little bit. In terms of what it is and why it's important to try to get into a flow state. And then we can maybe talk about breath work as a tool. Would that be the right way to kind of dissect this for people?
Yeah, absolutely. But before we move on, to your point about money, finances, that whole thing being overwhelming and stress inducing, right? Overwhelm is a lack of clarity, period. It is a lack of clarity. How many times have you sat down with someone who was completely freaked out about their financial situation and you go, well, let's put a light on it. Let's just see exactly where. And as soon as you do that, regardless of how good or bad the picture is, all fear leaves. Because fear can't exist in the light. I see the situation that is in front of me. Now we're just down to making the right decisions around this situation.
That's actually a great point. I see it all the time, quite frankly. So as a financial planner, people are coming to me for help with their finances. And if they have some fear or anxiety or stress, a lot of it, I don't know what percentage, but it's a significant percentage of people don't have good visibility or clarity about what their actual financial situation is, right? So just a simple act of creating a balance sheet, looking at their accounts, getting it all down on paper so they can see where they're at currently. I know in my practice, anecdotally, that immediately lowers their shoulders, lets them breathe a little easier, and they're feeling a little bit better right out of the gate. And we haven't even started talking to them about decisions that they can make to improve their situation. It's just that visibility, that clarity, turning on the light in the dark room as a step one is hugely impactful. So another great connection to kind of the financial aspect of what we're talking about.
Right. I look at this in business when I work with clients, and we look at this in business and we look at it, when I hear overwhelmed, what I hear is when I'm overwhelmed about money, overwhelmed about my business, overwhelmed about my finances, overwhelmed about my debt, overwhelmed about whatever this is. When I hear overwhelmed, that means that I have no idea what that picture looks like. I have no idea. And not knowing is more terrifying than knowing a really bad situation, right? Not knowing is actually more terrifying. And so beginning with clarity, beginning with clarifying what somebody's situation is, regardless of whether it's in their work, in their family, in their relationship, in their whatever, is the first step to reducing fear and eliminating that sort of fight or flight response. Now we're in the light, and then we see things. And it's really important to recognize the things that, and breathwork is a tool and flow state is a tool and all of these things are tools. But let's talk about real easy tools, right? Let's talk about stuff that you don't need to hire a coach for. Overwhelm is a lack of clarity, period. And a lack of clarity will always create fear. We will tell stories. We will come up with narratives. Humans are meaning-making machines.
We'll procrastinate and not deal with it, right? Just put it off, not go there, which is, causes its own set of problems, right?
And spirals and increases. And it just increases because every single month you let a problem go, particularly a financial problem, go that you don't want to look at. Month by month, it gets worse. When I deal with, I used to deal with, hoarders and they were afraid to open their mail, right? Cause I'm terrified of what that letter is going to say. And what I would tell them always, open the letter. By the way, that number is never going to go down. The number in the first letter is the lowest it's ever going to be.
Right.
Pay that one.
Right. Great advice.
That's the lowest, because I don't know. I'm afraid to open the bills. Open the bills. They're never going to go down. Right. They're only going to go up. That number's only going to increase. So,
right.
So for flow state is, and every human being has experienced flow state. Flow state is that state where you are completely immersed in an activity. And there's about 22 different flow triggers. And there are basically two different types. There's a complete immersion in an activity, surfing, snowboarding, free solo climbing, skydiving. It's what runners call runner's high. It's what extreme sports athletes call the zone, right? And it is complete immersion. Everything falls away. Most human beings experience it many, many times in their lives where you're completely involved in something. You think you're at it for 20 minutes. You've actually been at it for 2 hours. You come out of it and you're pretty hungry. You're a little bit exhausted, but you're sort of energized by what you've been doing.
And that brings up a quick question. So when we think about flow state, is flow state what we're trying to accomplish or get to so that we can deal with our day-to-day, our professional lives, our family obligations in a healthy way to keep that extreme physical response to stress at a healthy level? How should we kind of frame how we're using it, why we're trying to accomplish flow state?
When we go into flow state, medically described as transient hypofrontality, transient meaning it doesn't last real long, hypo meaning slower or less than, frontality referring to the prefrontal cortex. When we get into, so it's a shutting down of the prefrontal cortex. Think of it when a surfer drops into the barrel of a wave, it gets real quiet in their head, right? When an artist is just painting and they're completely immersed in a thing, it gets real quiet in their head. When a business owner is in the books and they're in like their zone of genius, like they're in the thing that they've created this for, and it's their passion and their creativity and everything they're working on this thing, it gets real quiet in their head. And so being able to access that place makes the rest of life really easy to move through. When we have the happiest people on earth are the people who have who have consistent access to flow state. Ask any surfer, right? This access to this, like really kind of, because what happens is the mind just kind of goes away, and in flow state, the ego falls away, like the part of your brain that all that self-referential thinking, all the comparison, the part of your brain that compares, that scrolls through Instagram and compares my life to everybody else's shitty life, right? Or my shitty life to everyone else's awesome life, right?
There's a lot there in the financial aspect, social comparison and keeping up with the Joneses and all that.
For sure.
Good three-way there.
The voice of the critic that follows you around and tells you that you suck, right? The voice of the critic who the moment you do something goes, that was a bad decision, that's going to bite you in the ass, right? Or what happens because now you committed, and it's the sound of buyer's remorse or the sound of investor's remorse, where you put that money out and then you suddenly go into this panic. Like, I just did the wrong thing. I made the wrong move. That was the wrong thing. The more time that you spend accessing like this deep internal part of you, and it's not a place you can stay. You can cultivate it, but not capture it. It is not a place that you can live. Just like fight or flight, rest and digest, sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system. You're not supposed to live in any of these, right? You're supposed to move through them. Breath work is my tool that I work with clients so you can set up hyper productive times in your day. And if you can set up like 3 periods of flow where you are completely immersed, you're completely productive, you're completely engaged in what you're doing, there's no distractions, your phone is off, it is just the thing that you're working on, you can get super productive, but you have to generate the right environment in order to do that.
Right. I became really interested in breath work. I read James Nestor's book that came out a couple of years ago. I think is it Breathe or Breath? I can't recall off the top of my head which one is.
It's Breath, The Science of a Lost Art.
And I came across this section of the book where he talked about a study, and I forget the statistics now, but the vast majority of people will literally hold their breath for 30 seconds, 60 seconds or longer while reading emails. And I read that. And then the next day I was reading emails and I had this trigger in my mind. I'm like, oh my God, I'm sitting here holding my breath. Right. Since then, been very interested in breath work and how that might apply to my day to day. So it's a really fascinating topic. So tell us more about breath work. How do you use that to kind of get us into this flow state?
So there are 3 different types of breath work that I teach. So there is intervention breath work. So there is, I am in my moment of panic. I am in my moment of stress. I'm about to sit down with a client and have a conversation that is not going to go well. I'm about to walk into court. I'm about to give a presentation, and public speaking is the most terrifying thing that I can think of. Like all of it. So in that moment of I need to shift my nervous system now. I need to shift this now, so that I have access to the good part of my brain, right? Understanding that I don't, right? I'm in fight or flight. I'm in my terrified moment. And so there are several different types of intervention breath work. I love a breath called the physiological sigh. And if you listen to Andrew Huberman, he talks about this on his podcast. And I'll just run you through it real quick. You take a great big deep breath in, fill the lungs, and then you take a few sips on top. Like really, and what you're doing is you're hyperinflating the alveoli, you're hyperinflating the lungs, the alveoli are the sacs inside the lungs that are responsible for gas exchange. And so you're pulling a huge pile of CO2 waste gas out and dumping a huge pile of O2 oxygen back into the system. So you take a deep breath, you hyperinflate it, hold 10 to 15 seconds, and then a long, slow release. And you do this like 2 or 3 times, you will immediately feel your nervous system calm, your mind will calm, your body will calm, and you take a couple deep breaths. And this is an intervention style breath. And people are amazed when they do this. And it works because it has to. It works because that's how the machine works. And once you understand how the machine works, you get to operate it at a really high level. You know, you take any 16-year-old kid, you throw them behind the wheel of a Ferrari, you know, within 20 minutes, they'll have that thing wrapped around a telephone pole. But if you take the same 16-year-old kid and you teach them how to operate an overpowered machine, they can do it as well as anybody else on the road, the track, any environment. As soon as they have an understanding of how the machine works and how to operate it well, And so humans were driving around in these overpowered machines. Our minds are incredible. Our bodies are amazing. What they can handle, what they're capable of, the feats, the thought that they are capable of is extraordinary. But we get caught up in this tiny little section of fear, overwhelm, or whatever,
Right.
and we can't get out and really get out onto the open road and let it wind out.
So with that tool, we're walking into the presentation, our minds are feeling the stress, our body takes over and reacts. And so what you're essentially is kind of taking back control or rewiring how your physiology is operating at that time with that's really simple. It sounds like breath work. Yeah.
And there are 2 or 3 different types of breaths that operate that will respond super quickly. So the bottom line is the heart sends 60 times more information to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. If you want to control the brain state, you have to control your heart rate. If you want to control your heart rate, you control your respiration. It's how the machine works. So I'm under stress. I'm freaked out. Slow your breathing down. When you slow your breathing down, your heart rate has to slow down. They're connected. And when your heart rate slows down, your freaked out brain goes, hey, I thought we were freaked out about the thing. And the heart goes, no, dude, you're freaked out about the thing. We're just fine. The body has to tell the mind that the body is safe before the mind will release fear.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah, makes sense.
You cannot think yourself into feeling safe. You must feel yourself into knowing that you're safe. Never in the history of calming down has anyone ever calmed down by being told to calm down.
Can you say that one more time? You can't talk yourself into feeling safe?
You cannot think yourself into feeling safe. You must feel your way into knowing you're safe. I must calm my body before my brain recognizes that I am safe. The mind takes its cues from the body. And when the body is calm, the mind goes, oh, I guess there's no danger. My heart, there's no wolf. My heart isn't racing. There must not be a wolf. And so, the body is responsible. That's the only direction that information travels. The information of safety only travels from the body to the mind, and you have to calm the body first. And this is where the breath work really comes in handy. So there's intervention style breath work in my moment. Then there's like sort of daily practice, all the Wim Hof method, the box breathing that you hear about that SEALs do, Navy SEALs and MARSOC guys and special forces. They do these box breathing. I teach one called a clarity breath, which is similar to box breathing. It's just a little bit more effective. It's 4-4-6-2 instead of 4-4-4-4. So you inhale for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, exhale for a count of 6. Hold for a count of 2, and you do this 2 or 3 times. You can do this at your desk. You can do this sitting in traffic. You can do this at the board table, and nobody will know that you're doing it. And your nervous system drops. You begin to regulate. And when the stuff hits the fan, humans naturally look for the calmest person in the room. We are naturally geared to seek out the calmest person in the room, and that person is automatically the leader.
So you get into that high-performing environment. You're talking about leadership in the business world, your career, being able to kind of control how you feel in those moments has positive benefits across the board.
How you feel, which is tied to how you respond, which is tied to how other people receive you. And if you are the calmest person in the room, you are in charge.
Right. I practice box breathing fairly regularly, and I'm always amazed that when I go through the second or third round, I'm shocked at how high my shoulders feel. It's like they're attached to my ears. And as I start to do it, they just naturally lower. And, I can feel that response, pretty quickly. So what was the one that you teach that's a little bit better than box breathing again?
The clarity breath is 4-4-6-2. So you inhale 2, 3, 4, hold 2, 3, 4, exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, hold 2, inhale and repeat. So inhale, hold, release for 6, hold for 2.
And the longer exhale has to do with releasing more carbon dioxide.
So, and the nervous system. So rule of thumb is if your exhale is longer than your inhale, you're going down, you're relaxing. If your inhale is longer than your exhale, you're going up, which is why you see fighters who are just about to get into a UFC cage, like they're going, they're driving their nervous system. They're building up. They're slapping their legs, their chest, their arms. They are building their nervous system. And then you watch them and they will step into the cage and they'll take one great big deep breath and they'll slow it all down. So their muscles are engaged. They're fully oxygenated. Their mind is fully engaged, and they are not operating from fight or flight. They're now operating from the very sharpest part of their brain, but their body is now ready to do what they got to do.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never would have connected. I would just think it's a fighter getting fired up for the fight, right? But they're actually doing some breath work as they're walking into that event and trying to tap into their body and kind of regulate where they're at before that big moment. Yeah,
exactly.
Cool. Yeah. Exactly. So there's intervention, there's daily practice. And did you say there was a third that you teach?
There's the third. Yeah. And so the third is my long form, limitless flow, breathwork, session. It's the one I invited you to. I can't wait to hear about your experience with it.
I'm looking forward to checking it out.
It's a 90-minute session. It's about 50 minutes of focused, intentional breathing. And this session is specifically designed to drop people into flow state, to put you in a state of transient hypofrontality. And it's the same state you enter when you drop into a wave. It's the same state you enter when you're free solo climbing, skydiving. You've been running for 10 miles plus. And it's that in people experience huge emotional releases. The things that they've been Rubik's cubing in their mind suddenly lock into place on them because you've now shut down the prefrontal cortex. All of the self-referential, self-comparison thinking, the way you respond and relate to everybody else, all falls away. All that ego falls away. The subconscious can now come out. Your body and your mind begin processing information at about 100 times their normal rate, which is why activities like surfing, painting, making music are so good for creative processes, whether they're artistic or business or anything else. Going for long walks, enjoying nature, where you can get attached to flow state, where you can drop into that place. Because it creates this opening of possibility, opening up your pattern recognition. So you're not just reacting to the same patterns you're used to. You're now looking for patterns in new and novel places.
Got it. How often, so if there's the intervention when we're faced with a stressful moment, there's the daily practice that we can get into, this deeper, more extended, limitless flow, breath work. How often do you recommend people really tackle something like that? I
have people who have been doing it with me weekly for years. There are people who do it multiple times a week. If you have the time and the space to do it once or twice a week, it is ideal. But like anything, how often should I go surfing? I don't know. As often as you can, really. How often should I, get on my bike and do 20 miles? Really, as often as your body, your schedule, your space permits, because you will reap huge benefits from doing it. I understand it's not like 90 minutes is a chunk, right? And it's not the first timers to my sessions. I'm like, just so you know, this is not the calm, relaxing, sleepy, breathy thing that you may think it is. Like, this is work. It is big output.
And is there development over time, I'd imagine, with people? So I hear 50 minutes, even when I box breathe sometimes, if I haven't done it in a couple of weeks, or if I'm particularly stressed in a moment or a day, I'll notice how bad at it I am. And that's just 4 in, hold 4, right? Simple kind of. So I'd imagine with a 50-minute breath work session, it takes some exercise, right? You got to work those muscles, or is it just we're all kind of capable? We all have different, limits. How do you think about that?
Yeah, you can totally this session was designed for someone who has never experienced breath work like this ever in their lives. I get lots of first timers. People that go, I have no idea what breath work is. My friend invited me to this thing. I'm just here for it. I don't know what we're about to do. I've heard of Wim Hof. Is that like this? I don't know. And it is designed for anyone, any level of fitness, any level of health to be able to do. I'm going to caveat that by saying if you have high blood pressure or you're pregnant or you have a heart condition that you're aware of, please talk to your doctor before like going ham in breath work. Aside from those sort of outlying conditions that you are generally aware of, anyone's capable of doing this. If you have a level of health that allows you to have sex, you are at the level of health that you can do this.
Good benchmark.
Yeah, if you're healthy enough to have sex, you're healthy enough to do this. So what happens is anybody can do this, and if you feel fatigued, just slow the breathing down. Just back off the intense breathing for just a little bit, and you'll be fine. What happens? It's very similar to a yoga practice where the routine doesn't change. The routine is the routine is the routine is the routine. It doesn't change week after week after week after week. It's the same. It doesn't change. You do. You get better at it. Your session, your technique gets more and more and more pristine. It's clear, it gets more polished. And it is the one thing that I have found I've never experienced diminished return from. Like I said, I come from an addiction background. 25 years ago, like I was a homeless, drunk, and drug addict. I would not have survived 1999. It's really important that I say that, right? I am clear about things that work really well, and then you get a diminished return from.
Right.
I have never experienced, and no one I have ever worked with has ever experienced diminished return from breath work. It reveals more and more and more. It just gets better. You do it more intensely. You do it with more precision. And, James Nestor talks about that in his book is, you start getting really into the details. Am I breathing in through my nose? Am I breathing through my mouth? How am I doing this? And I'm watching, and you just start getting real precise about how you're doing it, and you get better and better and better results.
Right. I really appreciate you sharing your personal struggles and where you came from and where you're headed. And obviously, when you're addicted to drugs and homeless, that's an extreme example. But I feel like there's a lot of people that deal with stress and their day to day with large amount of caffeine in the morning. They're stressed out all day. Then they come home and have a couple of drinks at night. Like there's all kinds of nicotine, weed. There's all kinds of substances that people are dosing themselves with on a regular basis, and I'm guilty of a lot of them myself, quite frankly. That if we can replace some of that with, not that no one should ever have a drink ever again, or that, I love coffee, but, can we do some things that kind of set us up for success? Yeah, I've got mine here too.
Right.
To kind of replace some of that so we don't feel the need to, like, I need to have a drink to calm down right now, or I need to kind of amp myself up every day.
Yeah. And it doesn't need to look like it's like substances either. It can look like doom scrolling on social media or news or whatever. It can look like compulsive sex behaviors. It can look like compulsive spending behaviors. It can look like gambling. Right. All of these things that take me out of me, but are ultimately harmful on any timeline. Right. On any timeline. And it's when I got into flow states and peak performance and breath work and mindfulness and meditation, I have yet to experience or hear of anybody experiencing detrimental effects, even on extraordinarily long timelines.
Right. I'm glad you brought up the compulsive spending. I think a lot of people overlook that one as a response to some kind of trauma or overwhelm or stress. They just think, well, I'm just bad at money. But it's like, maybe there's something else going on there more deeply that you can address. And, things like breath work can be a tool to kind of help you unpack that so you can live a healthier life, whether it's financial or otherwise. So this has all been great, Dave. Is there anything else that you want to touch on or share with us, teach us about before we kind of wind down?
No, what I do want to do is I want to invite your audience to experience a Limitless Flow Breathwork session. I will give you a discount code for
Awesome.
anyone who hears this. You can put it in the show notes. Anyone who's listening to this and is curious about what I'm talking about, I will give you a discount code. It's good for a free session. Come use it, come experience this. The thing you just said about overspending and this idea that I'm bad with money, that is a narrative, right? That is a story that you were taught, you learned, you came up with on your own. And it is like many other things. The moment we start shedding light on, like, why do you say that? Well, I don't have much money. I seem to spend everything that I make. I don't seem to be able to save it. That's interesting. It's a narrative that feeds itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is almost always based in a lack of understanding, a lack of clarity. And so I'm bad with money shows up just like overwhelm does. And it is a narrative that can be shifted, that can be changed, and that you get control over. And so I think it's a really important one, particularly for your audience who may have beliefs about how they are with money or what is or isn't available for them, what mindsets are and are not available to them around money, abundance mindset versus scarcity mindset, fear-based mindset versus, it's not a zero-sum game, right? It's not a pie, right? Me succeeding doesn't mean that somebody else has to lose, and somebody else succeeding does not mean that I have been taken from. And getting out of those kind of crazy fixed mindsets, breath work, flow states, all of these types of things can really help you with that.
That's great. I'm glad you made those comments. We talk about mindset a lot on the podcast, money mindset, where our beliefs come from, and the different tools and resources. Hypnotherapy and the hypnotherapists have been on the show, and breath work, flow state work is just another great tool to explore, to try to add to your toolbox to help you deal with some of those things and change your mindset. And we didn't even, we could have another whole episode. We'll have to have you back exploring mindset and breath work and flow state, kind of connect those dots. So appreciate your time. A couple of quick last questions. We brought up James Nestor's book, Breath. Are there any other books, podcasts that you listen to? You mentioned Huberman Lab. Is there any other resources that you think are interesting or worthwhile for folks to check out?
If you're interested in flow state specifically, I would say Stealing Fire by Stephen Kotler is an amazing sort of primer introduction to flow state. It's a giant rabbit hole. It's amazing. The science behind it right now is incredible. And Stephen has written a bunch of books. I'm a student of his. I'm a member of the Flow Research Collective, and so he is a mentor of mine that I think is incredible. Yeah, but James Nestor, Dan Brule is also another one. Is another great resource for breath work, and of course Wim Hof. I am not a Wim Hof guy. I am not a Wim Hof instructor, and I do Wim Hof breathing almost every single day. I think it is it is simple, it is approachable, and I love that Wim brought awareness of breathwork sort of into Western awareness. And I think his method is great.
I was just going to say, if nothing else, just to check out, there's all kinds of documentaries. He's been on a million podcasts. He's done a million physical feats. There's a lot of fascinating information about him and his breath work that is worthwhile in checking out. So those are all great recommendations. And last question, this is a show about financial well-being, but well-being in general. When you hear that term, you think about well-being. What does that mean to you, if anything?
Well-being is a holistic term, and it means that it means my financial well-being, my relational well-being, my time hygiene, which connects to my financial well-being. We could have an entire show on time hygiene. How is your time? How in control of your time are you? All of these things. And I will say for well-being, if I could offer one thing, if you were to add a gratitude practice, a meditation practice, a journaling practice, and a breathwork practice to your day every single day, totaling no more than like 45 minutes to an hour a day. You do it every day for 60 days, you will be a different person. At the end, you do it every day for 6 months, you will be unrecognizable to yourself.
That's great. Thanks so much, Dave, for sharing. We're going to link to the code for the breathwork session. I'm going to check that out. I'll be everybody's guinea pig and I'll share my experience. So you know how that went for me. Where do people check you out or your work? How do people get a hold of you? Socials, websites? What do you want us to spotlight for folks?
You can find me at become-limitless.com. I'm also real easy to find on Instagram or LinkedIn, Dave G_limitless. You start throwing out Daves and breathwork and flow state, and you'll
find it.
Yeah, I'm an easy guy to find. And yeah, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out. Lots of ways to make, do like a virtual coffee with me. If you have a question, I'm happy to answer.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dave. This has been really fun. And I guess just breathe, everybody. Just breathe. Just breathe.
Thank you so much, Jim. It is an honor to be here and a pleasure. And it's great to get to know you better.
Yeah, likewise. We'll see everybody. We'll see you next time. Thanks again.